Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss, is going low carb necessary for fat loss? So recently I gave a friend slash client slash whatever the reason why I don't typically say who I gave these diets to, so I was kind of like in the middle of me saying that I was kind of editing who I was saying, what I was saying about. But I like keeping their personal details personal. So I gave this diet to a person. Let's go with that. And the structure of the diet included protein at every meal. So they had to have some source of protein. There was a protein amount that our goal was to hit, like at least a minimum every meal, and then kind of a daily goal every day. And then each meal, the protein source was paired with carbs or fats, and it was based on meal timing. So basically, if they had the ability to have two meals only say 2 or 3 hours apart, they could have carbohydrate sources with their protein. If they knew that due to their daily schedule it was going to be 4 or 5 hours in between meals, they were supposed to have fats instead of carbs. So the ability for them to adjust on carbs versus fats was based on the fact that carbs and fats digest at different rates. So carbs are in general faster digesting than fats. Now there are incredibly varying degrees of digestion rates amongst carbohydrates and amongst fats. But in general, carbs are faster, fats are slower. So what it was intended to do was to adjust for allow variability basically in their meal timing. So that way they could structure their meals around their daily life, their job needs and life needs and whatever, but also to ensure they didn't get into too large of a caloric deficit. So it's actually a bad thing to have too low of calories whenever you're trying to lose weight. Your body will shut down, metabolism slows down, everything just kind of downregulates, the body gets really grumpy, and it fights against the process rather than playing along with the process. So there is a too low of calories, okay? So by allowing them to adjust based on their meal timing, whether they were going to have carbs or fats, it took care of the idea of creating a controlled caloric deficit. Then the person asked, if I just do all protein and fats, and if I go no carb, will I lose fat faster? So let's take a look at that question. So is going low carbs necessary for fat loss? There are many reasons why people will do that. And I've lost track of the good versus the bad reasons that people will try to decide on whether they should go low carb. 99% of the time, the person has no clue why. They just heard it, or they had a friend who said something about the keto diet and all this other stuff. So in general, one of the main reasons why people tend to go low carb is because they think it works, which it doesn't. Okay, and I'm not saying low carb doesn't work, but it doesn't work in the way that they think it works. So when we hold body water, when we hold water in our body, so like water retention, it requires carbohydrates, sodium, and water for our body to hold water. So if I weigh, say, 200 pounds, and that includes normal lifestyle, normal eating, with whatever carbs I normally have, and then all of a sudden I go low carb or no carb, well, now all of a sudden what I needed to hold water in my body, which was the carbs, the sodium, and water itself, and that combines together to form what's called glycogen. So once you don't have carbohydrates, doesn't matter how much sodium you have to have the carbohydrates, So once you don't have the carbohydrates, the body can't hold as much water internally, and you don't have as much water retention. So what tends to happen when somebody goes low carb right away, they'll tend to lose quite a few pounds within the first week, because it's actually just water weight coming off of them. So they might lose 4, 5, 6 pounds in the first week. And they think that is fat loss. They think it is progress. No! All you're doing is dumping out some water out of your body. That's it. So you just peed a bunch more that week, basically. And now your body is lighter. So that's one of the main reasons why is people will think that that's fat loss. So they'll say, oh, every time I go, low carb, I tend to lose weight pretty fast. Yeah, you lose weight, but you don't lose fat. There's a big difference. So if you drop off water weight, yes, you weigh less. But 99.99999% of the time when somebody wants to weigh less, it's because they want to be less fat. So if you're losing water out of the body and that makes your body weight go down, that does not mean that you lost fat. So once you were to return to eating carbs, your body will return to retaining water, and whatever you lost in the water weight aspect from going low carb, that amount of weight will come right back. So this is often why people do low carb diets. They'll try to get to a goal of, say, 20 pounds off, and then all of a sudden they try to go back to regular eating, they gain back 5 of those pounds. They didn't gain back fat, they gained back mostly water. So it's frustrating from somebody's point of view whenever you do understand what's happening, and then you watch people get excited about things that are dumb because it's not actually what they think they're doing. And then they go and give that advice to other people. And it's like, oh my gosh. So, unfortunately, misinformation is spread amongst people who are misinformed. And I know I'm trying not to be mean, and I don't want to come across as mean because I didn't know any of this stuff before I educated myself. So before I went to school and did all this stuff and learned whatever I need to learn, and I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been personal training for 18 years. I've had well over 1,000 clients. I've taught at the university level for 7 years. So I have a lot of experience. And it took all of this experience, it took all this time and education to get this understanding. So I have been the misinformed person myself. But very rarely did I give advice when I know it's so hard because you're going to think you know. Okay. So one of my favorite quotes is, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. Meaning that you don't know what you don't know. And it takes someone telling you, hey, you don't know this. And you go, holy crap, I didn't even know that was a thing I didn't know. So often when people are giving advice, they are meaning well. So they want to give good advice. It's just based off of the information that they have. It is not very good advice, or it's limited advice. So if you're going to take nutrition advice, go talk to a nutritionist. Go talk to anybody who does that as like a profession. So if I want to get car mechanic advice, I'm going to go to a car mechanic. If I want to get doctoral advice, I want to go to a doctor. Okay, so where you want the advice on, like the area of expertise. Okay, go talk to that expert. Don't listen to your Joe Blow down the street or Sally whatever at the hair salon. Go talk to people who actually know what they're talking about. Okay, so that's extremely helpful. Now, there are many other misconceptions as to why people go low carbs, but let's break down the science of this a little bit, okay? In podcast 41, don't turn off the podcast, by the way, just because I said the word science. Okay, it's not that science, okay? We're not going to go that deep. So just don't get scared of me yet. So in podcast 41, titled Diet Right, What Matters Most, we cover the top 5 components of what means the most in proper nutrition. Okay, number 1 is calories. Calories determine the direction of the diet. If I eat excessive calories above my daily needs, I will gain weight. If I eat in a deficit, okay, if I eat lower calories than what my need for my daily need is, I'm going to lose weight. So more calories, more weight. Less calories, less weight. So calories determine the direction of the diet. The next most important thing is protein. Protein is ridiculously important because it helps with body repair and maintenance. It has positive effects on body composition. It also helps to kind of like satiate you at meals to where you won't feel like you need to eat as much carbohydrates and fats, and it can actually help reduce overeating carbs and fats, which can in return reduce the likelihood of stored fat, body fat. So there's a ton of benefits of protein, okay? And if you want longer explanations of this, go listen to podcast 41. It'll give more detailed information. So the third most important thing is meal timing, and included in that is kind of meal frequency. And what those are in relation to is the experience of the diet. So how miserable do you have to be when you diet? If you get meal timing, and meal frequency correct, you don't have to be very miserable. Okay? And then macronutrient quality kind of determines the quality of the diet. So if I do a diet and everything's correct, meal timing wise, calorie wise, protein wise, but I'm eating a whole bunch of sugary, kind of just junky carbohydrates, okay, just really like just the worst stuff, or fats, maybe meaning just fried fat. So fried fat and fried fat. Okay, just the worst of the carbs, the worst of the fats. You're not go. It's not going to be the best of diet in regards to the quality of it. You're not going to feel great because of many digestive issues. Okay, and then also it's just your body composition is going to look as good the whole time. You still can have really bad blood work even if you're losing body weight, but eating fried foods and sugars all the time. So it's important to get your macronutrient quality correct, but it's less important than getting your calories correct. It's less important than getting your protein correct. It's less important than getting your meal timing and meal frequency correct. So quality of nutrients is important, and that would be something like white bread versus wheat bread. That is important, but it's not anywhere near as important as what people think. And overwhelmingly, most people struggle enough to get the first three components correct that the fourth component doesn't matter too much, okay, in regards to their overall progress. Because if they put a lot of effort into that fourth component, but they're still messing up with components 1, 2, or 3, they're not going to get really good results out of the effort that they start putting in. Okay? And then number 5 kind of is like the last stuff, like supplements and bullcrap and stuff that doesn't have that big of an effect, more just like a psychological effect. So that's what is most important in a diet is calories, protein, meal timing, meal frequency, macronutrient quality than others. Okay, all the other stuff. So if we think about back to the question of if I do just protein and fats, will I lose fat faster? So basically what they're asking is it better to go low carb? So we just talked about the components that are important there. Okay, so calories, it doesn't really matter whether you get the calories from fats or carbs. Now we're going to clear this up in a second, okay? But if we talk about just how can we meet the top components of a diet, as long as your calories are correct, the direction of your diet will be correct. Doesn't matter if those calories came from carbs or fats or proteins, just calories, okay? Carbs and fats don't really have anything to do with the second component, which is how much protein you're eating. So we're going to skip that part. And then meal timing and meal frequency, they relate to the experience of a diet. So do I have to feel miserable all the damn time? And that absolutely has to do with carbs and fats. So in regards to calories, carbs and fats are important because they contribute energy. So typically we think of protein as used more for body repair and maintenance and kind of other like worker type stuff. But we don't typically think of or count protein towards energy kind of supply. Now, this is the way I do nutrition. It's the way I teach nutrition. Does protein have calories in it? Yes, there's 4 calories per gram of protein. Okay, I'm not unaware of that. It's just we're not going to get the bulk of our energy source from protein. We're going to get the bulk of our energy source from carbs or fats. Okay, so carbs and fats do contribute towards calories. We want to just think of them as energy nutrients. So they are putting fuel in our gas tank. Okay, carbs are generally fast fuel, fast burning fuel. I can use it now, burn it up now, but it doesn't stay very long. Whereas fats are, it kind of slowly gets going, kind of slow to get to use, but then they just burn for a really long time. Okay? So it's just a nice, slow, steady stream of energy, whereas carbs are fast bursts of energy kind of thing. Okay? Now, why that is important when it comes to meal timing and why I structured this person's diet where they had to pick carbs if they knew they had a shorter window of time frame between meals and fats if they had a larger window of time frame between meals is because of this digestive difference. Okay, so meal timing is instead of me saying, hey, if you eat proteins and carbs, you have to eat at these times, or if you eat proteins and fats, you have to eat at these times. So one style of diet, I might make them eat at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, and let's just say blah, blah, blah for the rest of the day. Okay, they have to eat at 6, 9, and 12. What happens if they have a business meeting at 9? What if they're a teacher and they're in the middle of a class at 9? What if they're a nurse and they have a hard, crazy shift and they can't get to food at 9 o'clock? What if you have whatever the hell else everyone else ever does, okay, that everyone deems themselves too busy to eat, okay, which is a very common complaint people have, is what if you can't have the meal at that exact time? Well, my response is, why the hell are you dictating the time? Why does it have to be 9 o'clock? If it has to be 9 o'clock because you picked a certain type of carbohydrate, pick a different carbohydrate. So, what the hell, people? Why do we make this stuff so much more complicated than it actually needs to be? It surprises me. So you don't have to dictate meal times first, then what foods fit into those times. You can say this is that's actually, I said that incorrectly, is you don't have to predetermine meal times and say that it has to be at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., and noon. It just has to be that way. So what can I eat that would make that work? Okay, that's one way of doing it, but it's kind of not really the best way. So a better way of saying it is I have the availability to eat at, say, 6 a.m., 10 a.m., and then 12:30. Okay, if you can do those times consistently, then let's pick the foods that digest correctly from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. What's the right foods for a 4-hour window? Then from 10 a.m. to 12:30, okay, what's the right foods for a 2.5-hour window? Why not do it that way? It's a much, much, much better way of doing it. Okay? And since we know that the digestion rates differ between carbs and fats, there might be a certain meal timing window that if you pick carbohydrates, it's insufficient. The body will burn through them too quickly and you'll be left without enough resources. Now, why is that a bad thing? Like we said, if your calorie deficit is too severe at certain points of the day, the body will fight against fat loss. So we want to have a controlled deficit. The best way to control the deficit is to pick foods that digest at appropriate rates at the meal times that we want to have that fit our lifestyle. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do. Now, with that in mind, we now know that since carbs digest relatively quickly comparatively to fats, and fats digest relatively slowly comparatively to carbs, that if I have a large window time frame, maybe 5-6 hours between meals, I absolutely want to focus on proteins and fats. But if I only have a 2 or 3 hour window and I eat fats, my fats in that meal, okay, the first meal might not be fully digested and burned off by the second meal. So now all of a sudden at the second meal, you're putting more calories on top of calories, and all of a sudden you're no longer in your caloric deficit. So it's important that we don't go long stretches of time without food, and it's important that we don't compound food on top of each other. So it's important that we have the foods digesting at the rate in which we need, given the meal timings we have available. So that's the idea behind all this. Okay? So whether you have carbs or fats, it really depends on when your meal timing is available to be done. When do you have the opportunity to eat? Then you can work on food preferences within those windows. So there's a bunch of types of carbs. Okay, dozens upon dozens upon dozens. And there's a bunch of type of fats. Dozens upon dozens upon dozens. So if I know that fats are best for me at this mealtime, what's the most favorite fat that I have available? And that's what I would eat. Okay? Now within healthy. So don't eat fried Oreos as your fat source. So within healthy types of fats, what is the right fat that I would want right now? And then if I have a short window of time, I would eat carbohydrates. Okay? And I would have whatever I felt was the one that I liked. Okay? The carbohydrate I liked for that time frame. So if you just do protein and fats, will you lose fat faster? No. So whether you have carbs or fats depends on when your meals are, okay? And that's pretty much the best kind of indicator of it. So do I need energy now or do I need energy later? So if you need energy now, carbs. If you need energy later, fats. If I'm doing a lot of activity right now, carbs. If I'm not doing much right now, fats. It's that quick, that simple, that easy. So going low carb has absolutely no advantage to it. compared to just eating mixed source of fats and carbs appropriate for the meal timings you have. Okay? So, it helps a lot to learn more about what food does in your body. So that way you don't just blindly take advice from people who maybe don't know what they're really talking about. Okay? So some of the best podcasts you can listen to that we'll include in the footnotes, okay, in the description of today's podcast, is podcast number 41, Diet Right, What Matters Most. Okay? Now, that one's going to be absolutely the best one to listen to. And then there are some other ones that we'll include in here. And each podcast takes 20, 30 minutes. So it is a little bit of time investment, okay? But if you listen to one podcast a day, you're going to learn this stuff really fast. If you listen to one podcast but spread it out over 2 days, you're still going to learn this stuff within a month. So why not invest 1 month of your life to learn more about food so you can control it for the freaking rest of your life? Please, 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 okay? Take the time. These podcasts are free. You can listen to them anytime you want. All this information that you need to live healthy, happy lives is right here. Now, if you take the time to listen to them and you're uncertain of some things, you still have some questions, email us. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. We'll get you a direct answer, and or we'll make a podcast out of it, okay, if it's a good question. If you need specialized help, if you want a personalized program, of course we're going to help with that because that is how we stay in business. So that is a service for us that we provide. But anything you need, if you truly want to take control of your nutritional health and have a nutrition lifestyle that fits your irregular lifestyle, let us help you if you need it, okay? Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. Cool. Okay, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Jim. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email at brutalironjim@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.